Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you like this podcast, you will love my new anthology called Moms Don't Have Time to Have Kids. Check it out, and you'll hear from 49 authors about all sorts of things moms don't have time to do. All the authors have been on this podcast. Also, check out my TikTok with Zibby and Tracy, my other podcast, Sex Talk with Zibby and Tracy. Check out Moms Don't Have Time to Write on Medium. And of course, my new publishing company called Zibby Books. And now back to our daily author interview site and a quick hello from some of my kids. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Enjoy the show. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope you all had a great break. I wanted to let you know about something that I've been talking a lot about on social media at Zibby Owens, which is the hashtag 22 in 22 challenge. We are at Zibby Books, we are encouraging everybody, like all of you, to visit 22 bookstores in 2022. And we're going to provide a whole series of incentives for every 5 visits, and you'll be entered to win a $500 shopping spree, and you'll get fun things like bookmarks and all the rest. Plus, you'll be part of a great community of people all helping support bookstores, authors, and more. We're really, really excited about it. If you want to join, sign up. You just go to 22in22.net. That's 22in22.net and click I'm in and put your information. And then every time you go to a bookstore, you just quickly go back on the site and click log a bookstore visit. And then we'll be keeping track and we'll be following up with all of your different achievements and awards and everything. So please sign up, spread the word. 22 in 22, get your friends to join and start visiting bookstores, and it'll be really fun and exciting. So here's to a wonderful 2022. I'm so excited that you're listening to my podcast and doing all the fun things that I have been trying to bring into the world. So here we go, 2022. Hashtag 22 in 22. Jacqueline Woodson is the author of the children's book, The Year We Learned to Fly. Jacqueline is the recipient of the 2020 MacArthur Fellowship, the 2020 Hans Christian Andersen Award, the 2018 Astrid Lindgren Memorial Award, and the 2018 Children's Literacy Legacy Award. And she was the 2018 to 2019 National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. Her New York Times bestselling memoir, Brown Girl Dreaming, won the National Book Award, as well as the Coretta Scott King Award, a Newbery Honor, and the NAACP Image Award. She also wrote the adult books Red at the Bone, a New York Times bestseller, and Another Brooklyn, a 2016 National Book Award finalist. Her dozens of books for young readers include Coretta Scott King Award winner Before the Ever After, New York Times bestsellers The Day You Begin and Harbor Me, Newbery Honor winners Feather, Show Way, and After Tupac, and D. Foster, and the picture book Each Kindness, which won the Jane Addams Children's Book Award. Welcome, Jacqueline. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss The Year We Learned to Fly and just so much else. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Zibby. I'm glad to be here.
And this is so nice. I feel like I was so excited the first time I saw you on a little Zoom for the Center for Fiction board meeting. I was like, oh, this is so nice. And now you have an even bigger square on my Zoom. So there you go. We're like trading up in the world.
And then we'll be back on that little square again.
Yes.
So hopefully at some point in real life, we'll have a board meeting. So
that would be nice.
I
actually saw you with Kwame Alexander, who had been on my podcast a couple of years ago when he brought the Kwame bus or whatever. Do you remember the bus that was?
Yes.
Outside. Anyway, so.
Did he bring it to you?
No. He brought it to the Center for Fiction. So I grabbed my kids and we went over there and watched, and you were on stage and there was, I can't remember the other. Anyway, there were like 2 other people.
Yeah, it wasn't Jason. Oh, no. It was people from Kwame's his imprint. So it was probably Lamar and someone.
Yeah, don't ask me the names. I would recognize their faces. But anyway, okay. So The Year We Learned to Fly. Let's talk about this book, which is absolutely beautiful, illustrated by Rafael Lopez. Talk about the inspiration for this beautiful children's book.
Thank you for asking. You know, it's so weird to have it out in the world. It's weird to have a new book out in the world and to be on this quote unquote book tour. I mean, I'm so happy to be able to be home, to not have to leave my family and the dogs in Brooklyn and be able to go out into the quote unquote world. But it's surreal. It's definitely surreal. And I think about when I first started writing The Year We Learned to Fly was before there was even a pandemic. And so it was this idea of writing about escape in the way that even when we're getting punished or, having time out, that we still have control over our mind and the places that we can go inside of it. And so, I'm writing and rewriting. And then at some point I decided I wanted to revisit Virginia Hamilton's The People Could Fly, which is a retelling of African-American folk tales. And one of the folk tales in the book is about the history of enslaved people and the idea of them flying back across the water to home, back to Africa. And I thought, wow, what if I took that idea and brought it into the 20th century and the descendants of those ancestors were a part of this narrative. And that became The Year We Learned to Fly. And in the course of writing it, of course, we all had to figure out how to fly. Like we all, suddenly were in the house with our beloveds and with our children and with our pets and with no place we could physically go. And so I'm chuckling about it, but at the same time, I'm like, it's, careful what you write about.
That's so funny because I was so sure when I read it that you had written it during the pandemic. I was like, oh, this is perfect. How helpful is this? It's
No, I couldn't have dreamed this pandemic. I couldn't have dreamed so much of this past, this past year and a half. So,
oh my gosh. Well, this whole notion of sort of escaping through imagination, I mean, that's really at the crux of storytelling and writing to begin with, right? And the what you think about and where you take your mind, yes, you can just fantasize, but then so much of that arrives on the page in some way, shape, or form. So it's almost like, it's like the pre-writing, right? It's like the imaginative stuff before it lands that you're really captivating and encouraging, which is so important.
Oh man, it is.
Especially now. I interviewed Brendan Slocum yesterday, and I told him about you on his podcast. He wrote The Violin Conspiracy. Have you heard about him yet?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, I feel like you two need to meet and do an event together. I just told his publicist this too. Not that this is any of my business, but there were so many similar themes of what you do when your circumstances are sort of working against you and how do you cope with that? And one way is to it's the power of your mind and optimism and perseverance and all of that. So his was in the context of, being a Black young violinist and having so much opposition. But anyway.
He's brilliant too. He's so brilliant. So it's amazing. I can't believe he and I haven't met yet. It's interesting because, my dog, we have two huge dogs that are half poodle, half German Shepherd. And so they're huge. You can only see 1/3 of him. But the older one, who's 4 years old, it has been sick and we've been trying to figure out what it is. And I'm just like, it's fungal. It'll go away. And my partner, who's a physician and knows these things, is like, I think it is something different from that. I'm like, I'm going to do my magical thinking. And thinking about, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on her name, but The Year of Magical Thinking, who just passed away.
Joan Didion.
Joan Didion. And remembering her book, The Year of Magical Thinking, and the death of her husband and all of that. I am such a true believer of the power of magical thinking, of the power of optimism, and how it can be a force, if not changing the situation, at least getting us through it.
Right.
So
it's so interesting. I feel like your whole thing is looking up, right? Even the cover, they're learning to fly, thinking of the sky. And I feel like when I'm in really stressful situations, I do the exact opposite. And I have to look down. Like, I feel like if I look up, it makes me too anxious, like all these things coming. So I'm like, if I just look at what's right on my desk or at my feet or right in front of me, then I can get through whatever this is versus, escaping in some way. I don't know.
That's so interesting. I mean, it makes absolute sense that, that moment by moment way of getting through stuff, because it is overwhelming when you look out there and see how much more work there is to do. So I find when I'm writing, if I go outside, well, not so much anymore because my eyes are much better because I had eye surgery, but I used to take off my glasses because I wanted the world to be blurry. I didn't want to have any more stimuli coming toward me. So I can't really do that now.
My eyes are starting to get blurry and I'm trying to ignore it. My husband keeps being like, go to the eye doctor. And I'm like, no, no, no. And then I keep like holding my menu like over here. He's like, this is getting embarrassing. It's time. Anyway, I'm holding out.
The phone with the light on it
Yeah.
for the menu. Yeah.
I was literally at a restaurant, obviously straining too much, that the guy, like the maitre d' guy, like brought me over a lantern. Like I was 85 years old. I'm like, this is so embarrassing. Anyway.
He could have brought you over a large print menu.
Yeah, I know. It's just so bad. Wait, so how did you get here? How did you become a #1 best-selling author, a National Book Award winner, and like all the stuff, Hans Christian Andersen Award? Like it's amazing what you've accomplished. Like, did you always know? When did it start? Like, how did you do it?
I've known I wanted to be a writer since I was 7. I love the physical act of writing. I loved the scratch of the pencil on paper. I mean, it was so visceral for me, that physical act. And I love it. And I think of it like a visual artist in terms of watching letters form on the page felt like magic to me. And I didn't know it then, but I saw the power in it, right? I saw the power in how when you put a word on the page, that word became something and that sentence became something. And it wasn't just about me anymore. It spoke to other people who could read it or who I could read it to. Yeah, at 7, I didn't know any of this, but I felt it. So it was more of a feeling. And I love telling stories. I got in trouble. I talk about this a lot for lying all the time. I would make up stories all the time. And I would say I wanted to be a writer. I lived a physical writer. Like I just wanted to write. And I think at that age, I didn't know what that meant. I wanted to write. I wanted to physically write every day and the storytelling. So of course, those started kind of coming together as I got older. And I was writing poetry and short stories and stuff, but I never knew it was going to be this. I remember being around 10 or 11 and being in my bathroom in the mirror with my hairbrush, giving a thank you speech for the Pulitzer Prize. And all I knew was that this was an award that was given to writers. And it was the only one I knew. Like, even though we had the Newbery sticker on our books in school, I didn't make that connection that was a writing award, but I had heard something about the Pulitzer Prize in writers. So I was thanking, my readers.
By the way, I did the same thing at the same age, but I didn't even know about the Pulitzer Prize. So I would get up and pretend like, congratulations, you're the youngest person who's ever written a book. And I'm like, thank you so much.
That's so funny. Anyway. Oh man, mirrors and hairbrushes. That's the whole, that's a whole other story.
Anyway, keep going. So
I know it. I love the connection, the fact that I wasn't the only one doing that in my, Bushwick apartment. But I didn't have a backup plan. I really didn't have a backup plan. My mom and grandma wanted me to teach or be a lawyer or do hair or something that was going to earn an income, because that was what they knew. We had been a family of the Great Migration. We came here from South Carolina, and part of that migration narrative is the idea of better opportunities for your children, right? It's the same as the immigrant narrative. You come from a place of oppression, which was the South, during and post Jim Crow, and you go to a place where there's opportunity, which was the North, New York City. And their idea of someone making it was getting a job and having a pension, or marrying a man, it's very heteronormative, marrying a man who would provide for you. And that wasn't in my narrative. Neither one of those things. I had no interest in this idea. I wasn't one of those girls who dreamed a wedding. I wasn't one of those people who thought that I would work the same job and go into an office and punch a clock and have a boss and get a paycheck and have a fixed income, which I understood because my mother always talked about being on a fixed income when we wanted something extravagant, and her salary was the salary in the house. But so I knew writing brought me the most joy, and I didn't know how I was going to do it. So I knew it eventually have to take odd jobs to pay stuff like rent and get out of my mom's house. But I didn't dream this. I really didn't dream this. I do know that I wanted to do what I loved, and writing was the thing I loved.
What were some of the oddest jobs?
Oh my God. What? Well, I worked at Haagen-Dazs on the Upper East Side, 63rd and First, I think it was. And then one on a 60 something at first. And I worked on the one on 52nd and Third. I worked as a teenager, of course, I worked in fast food restaurants, even though I didn't eat fast food. I worked as a word processing secretary for a long time, mainly as a temp secretary at different banks, like manufacturers, Hanover, banks that don't even exist anymore.
I remember those.
And I worked with runaway and homeless kids. I worked for Blue Cross Blue Shield, handling insurance forms. And for those of you who have like done insurance claims and haven't gotten your money, maybe now it's different because it's computerized. But back in the early 90s, it was all paper forms. And when I didn't understand them, I just hide them somewhere. So, of course I feel terrible about it now, but I'm like, I can't read that. They were carbon copies. And sometimes the copies that we got, which were very light, were too hard to read. And it's like, okay, this is getting hidden behind, this typewriter or whatever. So I was terrible at that job, needless to say. But yeah, it was a lot of clerical work, data processing, like putting in numbers was terrible. And what blew my mind and still breaks my heart is how hard people have to work for so little money. I would work 8-hour days at that time for like $7 an hour. It was crazy. And I'd be tired and barely able to make ends meet and having to go back the next day and no promise of anything more coming, anything more economically, anything more creatively, And so for me, when I got home at night, there was a desperation to my writing. By that time, I was like, I want to get to the point where I can do this and not have to worry about whether or not I can pay the rent. And one of the first rules of writing is keep a low overhead, which I was very good at. I had a very cheap rent and a housemaid and ways of making it happen. And then I got a fellowship at the McDowell Colony, which was my first, it's not the McDowell Colony anymore, it's at McDowell, which was my first writing fellowship. And the first time someone really saw me as a writer, and I'm, eternally indebted to McDowell. And that was kind of the light that shone on me that said, yeah, you can make this happen. And to go there for 8 weeks and not have to worry about anything. And from there, I got a fellowship to the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown, which was a 7-month fellowship. And because after the fellowship, I ended up staying on for 5 years because my rent was really cheap and I could write full time.
You're like, you thought I graduated, but I didn't. I'm still here and I'm not leaving. Pretty much.
No, sorry. They give you a place to live for free for 7 months. Then you have to find your own place. But their whole idea is that they're trying to bring artists to Provincetown to keep that artist community going. So they were happy that when artists came there and I was like, yeah, I get it. This is where I want to stay. And as visual artists and writers and poets, I don't know why people say writers and poets. We're all writers.
I know, right? Yeah. Wow. What a story. How did you even know? Like, I didn't even know about fellowships. Like, I wouldn't have known I never applied. It was not on my radar. Like, how did those get on your radar? Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember having friends who were constantly saying, you need to get an MFA. If you want to write, you have to have an MFA. And I knew I didn't want to go back to school. And I knew I didn't want to pay for anything because I didn't want to risk debt. Because debt was going against my plan of low overhead.
Right.
So I remember getting I think it was in Poets and Writers. I would go to Barnes and Noble and buy Poets and Writers and look for places to submit to and seeing about, I think there might have been an article on, at those times they were called writers' colonies, and reading it and being, wait a minute, this is free? Wait a minute, all I have to do is apply. And I think for McDowell, the first time I applied, I got in. And I let me backtrack. I also, my editor at the time, Wendy Lamb, her husband, a composer, Paul, he had been a fellow there. And so she might have also told me about McDowell. And it was one of the few places at the time that was considering people who are writing young people's literature. because a lot of the places were like no adults only or whatever. They were stupid. But McDowell was open to all genres. Now, most of those places are, but at that time, there were very few. There were people who looked down on young people's literature as lesser than, which is bananas and sad, but also speaks to the state of our country and the way people think about young people.
Very true. Well, I have to say, my second grade daughter, I have 4 kids, but my second grade daughter has been reading your work in her class. So when I showed her this book, she was like, "Oh my gosh!" Anyway, she was so excited. She went into school today telling her teacher that I was talking to you. So how does it make you feel to start from, the pretend microphone to influencing what's sure to be generations of children? I mean, that's amazing.
A little bit old. It's so bananas because I was at a gathering for people of color in publishing. And there was one woman who was an agent. There was one woman who was an editor and another woman who had just written her first book. And they were so excited to meet me because they had read me as kids. And I was like, wow. Wow. And they were in their late 20s, early 30s. So it's interesting to watch the generation grow up. And I think it's part of why I went back to writing for adults too, because I'm like, oh, my readers are growing up. I still want to continue to have conversations with them. But I love young people so much. I mean, they exhaust me and I love their energy and I love their curiosity. And I love being able, I never dreamed that I'd be having this conversation with them through literature, that I'd be having, my own experiences as a young person legitimized by other young people in a whole different time and space, having those same experiences or being able to engage with me about them. So I feel grateful. I mean, if I had to choose one word, it would be grateful. That it feels very full circle. Like I started out as this young person wanting to write books that were not speaking, wanting to write books because there were so many books in my classroom library that didn't tell my story. And then as a result, write books that tell so many people's stories across, gender and class and sexuality and race and all of the different things that seemingly divide us.
Well, I feel like any work, I was just saying this morning, but any work that unites us by our emotions, right? That is the fundamental core to everybody. The same feelings, the same hopes and dreams. And I think people forget, or they like to pretend that can't be the case to justify their other beliefs or something. But everybody has the same stuff. It's all the same love. Love is, all the same love and attachment. And I don't know, when you tap into that in a book like this one or your other work or whatever, it's, it makes everybody feel seen.
It's so true. I'm so glad you mentioned the emotional core, because I do believe that's where I start from as a writer. And I think so many of the books that grab me and hold me are because the writer has gone to that place. They're not trying to sidestep it by being quirky or cute or overly engaging or letting language get in the way of it. They start at that core and just pull me right in.
So what's like a book like that you've loved or something that pulled you in?
My goodness.
I want to be pulled in. Pull me in. Take me with you.
What book have I read? Well, I'm thinking of the adult book I've read. I'm reading, and I think it's on Paradise. It hasn't come out yet, but it's by the same person who did This Little Life or A Little Life. Oh my goodness. I am so deeply moved by that. Of course, anything Jason Reynolds writes, he's definitely an emotional core kind of guy, and Kwame, of course. I do feel like there are a lot of people who write for young people who really start at that point. I go back to someone like Jane Yolen and Al Moon. That book was one of the books that helped me learn how to write picture books. And also I can revisit it again. I can revisit it often and still feel that tug at my heartstrings in it. The 10th Good Thing About Barney. I don't know if you know that book.
I don't know that one.
Hopefully you'll never have to read it to your children, but It's about a kid who loses their pet. Pet, and they're trying to figure out, the parents ask them to write 10 good things about Barney. And it's so beautiful. And it's another book that, and it's not trying to be sappy at all, but at the same, it allows you to have that cathartic emotional release that good literature allows you to have.
Have you read Rex Ogle's Free Lunch or Punching Bag?
Mm-mm.
He's amazing.
I'm taking notes.
No, he's so great. It's his own story of growing up, having subsidized lunch and being embarrassed by that and the abuse that was going on. But he writes. I just love his work.
Thank you for that. So Free Lunch, and then the other one's called Punching Bag?
Yep. Punching Bag's like the continuation. Free Lunch is, I think, middle school, and then Punching Bag is high school. Oh. And you just like kind of fall in love with him and his abuela. And I don't know. I love those are, that's my middle grade recommendation aside from,
Thank you.
So what are you working on now?
Right now, I'm working on a screenplay that I'm supposed to get the outline in today but it might not happen because I want to go for a run, like run screenplay. And I have another picture book that's coming out later this year, that's all about play that I'm excited about. I love the year we learned to fly for the emotional core of it. I love the next book that's coming out because it's all about the games we played in the 70s and 80s when kids actually played in the street as opposed to now when they're kind of not doing it as much. And what else am I working on? I'm looking around my desk. I have another screenplay I'm working on, and I'm working on a nonfiction book for adults, and I'm working on a middle grade book for young people that I can't talk about because then I won't go back and work on it. It's like I've already given and that's the thing about it, right? When you write the things you cannot speak. And once you communicate them, it's like, well, I've spoken them, I've gotten the reaction, so I'm good. So I try not to speak it until it's done.
How many days a week do you run?
Not enough. During the pandemic, I was really running or walking or some combination every day, just because we were living up at our house in Brewster, and it's right on the reservoir, so I could actually go out, and I had to escape my family, so it made sense. But now, since my family is mostly gone during the day, I don't have to leave the house as much. So now I try to get out about 4 or 5 times a week.
I'm impressed. Very impressed.
It's hard.
Your knees don't hurt? I feel like I'm getting old.
Now it does. And I'm blaming it on the cold weather because I'm old, I'm much older than you. And I'm blaming it. I'm like, it's not arthritis. It's because it's cold out. So I try to do prophylactic stuff. I try to stretch a lot and take ibuprofen before I go running to see if that helps. But yesterday I went out to run, and I was able to run about a half a mile, and I had to walk the other 3.5 miles. I was so cranky. What's going on?
Well, at least it's not just me then.
No, not at all.
Back to the emotional truth is that all of our bodies start to fall apart in the exact same timeline, right? It's like here we go. We're like on this escalator up to disintegration. I should say down. It's like an escalator down to disintegration and aging. And anyway, whatever.
Do you have the thing when you see people move and they're like, they do these dance steps and they go down, and I'm like, how are they able to even do that? Like, I don't even think I could do that when I was 20.
Oh my gosh. One of my kids can like move her leg. Like, I'm like, how on earth? And she's like, try it. I'm like, what? I can't even, I can barely sit down these days. I can't even like stand up. Like, give me a minute as I haul myself up on the kitchen counter. So yeah.
But you play tennis, right?
I do. Oh my gosh. Thanks for saying that. Yes, I do play tennis, but not enough, particularly not in the winter. Like, what am I going to do? I'm not like I'm not a bubble person. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I used to be, but I don't know. These days, I've been doing like an app, workout app if I can.
Yeah.
I did one this morning, and I'm so out of shape. I should stop talking about it. But I did my first podcast today with this author, Nicole Perkins, and I like was so sweaty from unanticipated sweat from this what should have been easy workout that I had to like do the podcast on my knees because I didn't want to sit on my chair. Anyway, pathetic. So pathetic.
Oh man.
Anyway.
What did Nicole Perkins write? That name is familiar.
She wrote, "Sometimes I trip on how happy we could be."
Oh, that's a great title.
Yeah, it's good. It's a collection of essays.
Okay.
Anyway, not to keep promoting other. Yeah, you can write that down too. A lot of sort of sexual undertones but really interesting, and talks about like pop culture and how she didn't see herself in pop culture the way you were talking about in literature, the Breakfast Club and all these movies, John Hughes, and like where was, anyway. Okay, off topic. Okay, last question, and I'll stop chit-chatting. What is your advice?
This is fun.
What's your advice for aspiring authors?
I would say read lots of picture books. I think it's really important. One great thing about a picture book is it's a very short novel, right? And it gives you narrative arc. It gives you character arc and metamorphosis. It shows you how to get into a book quickly. At the beginning, it shows you how to get out of a story. And in the same way, you can learn that from a book that's 300 pages, but it's going to take you a lot longer. You're going to have a lot more text to study. So I always encourage young writers of all ages to read lots of picture books, well-written picture books. So, they don't need to rhyme. I mean, look for the ones that have a story and write every day if you can. And even if it's writing down an idea or writing a poem or writing a memory, or just write something because writing is a muscle. And if you don't use it, it atrophies. And if you use it, it gets stronger. So that's where I would begin to give advice. If I was still teaching, it would be a lot more advice and a lot longer. And we talk about the hero's journey and the importance of reading poetry, which I will say it's very important to read poetry. And if you don't have poetry at home, Poetry Society of America, Poetry Foundation, you can go to various sites and find really good poems. I read this beautiful poem by Sharon Olds today that it was about motherhood. A lot of her stuff is very emotional in this way. And I just thought, okay, my day is done.
Oh my gosh. Wait, I want you to send me the,
I will.
I want you to send me the thing. Put it in.
The poem?
Yeah,
okay.
Send me the poem. I'm excited to read that. Amazing. Yeah, I just did this roundup of the best poetry books that have come out recently.
Oh,
for
wow.
Katie Couric Media. So
where can we find the list? Because I love reading poetry.
I can send you the link, but I wrote it for Katie Couric Media. I do these roundups on her website. I don't know, every other week. So yeah, but I'm always looking for good poetry books too. So anyway, well, thank you so much. Go for your run. Don't let me hold you back. And I hope you feel good doing it and have better luck standing up tonight than I do.
Thank you. It's so fun talking to you.
You too. All right. Have a great day.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.